Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Well, thank you very much indeed for that very warm welcome. And I'd like to acknowledge the National Centre for having me back. I can't have done too badly first time. I've no doubt that the referendum result is up there with the fall of the Berlin Wall and 9/11 as a climactic event in the history of recent British foreign policy, and certainly in my lifetime. The decision is a momentous one for Britain and for Europe, and it will have repercussions for many years yet. But it's now our job, public servants, diplomats, and individuals who love our country, to make the decision work for the people of the UK, for Europe, and for the rest of the world. And as Theresa May, our new Prime Minister, has put it, Brexit means Brexit, and we're going to make a success of it. What are some of the main themes, though, that will dominate the next few weeks and months? First of all, nothing changes in the short term. There's been a lot of febrile commentary, and it's completely understandable. The tone and the tenor in Britain was very tense in the months running up to the referendum. But we remain a member of the European Union with all the rights and obligations of that membership for as long as we are in the European Union and until we leave it. And the Prime Minister has said that we don't intend to trigger the mechanism for leaving the European Union until next year. I think the other thing I would say under this category is that our values haven't changed. Britain remains open, engaged in the world, committed to free trade, committed to working with our allies, and committed to working to solve the global problems that we face on the world stage. And the new Prime Minister has strongly reiterated Britain's continuing commitment to work with our international partners to ensure a safer, healthier, and more prosperous world. We are a member of the UN Security Council, one of the 5 permanent members, of NATO, the G7, the G20, and the Commonwealth. And it's not just membership that counts. We're putting our money where our mouth is too. We're the only major economy to simultaneously meet the UN target of spending 0.7% of gross national income on overseas development and the NATO commitment to spend 2% of GDP on defence. And let's not forget that Britain is the 5th biggest economy in the world, so these are not small amounts of money. While the process of Brexit will of course require significant expertise and a consistent approach across government, it won't lead us to neglecting the rest of the world. Indeed, it is to avoid this very possibility that our Prime Minister introduced changes to our machinery of government, including the creation of a government department for exiting the European Union and a new department for international trade, which now incorporates our excellent trade and investment teams here in New Zealand that do such good work on behalf of UK businesses and New Zealand investors in the UK. Nobody should, of course, fool themselves that the process will be brief or straightforward. But we are undoubtedly capable of delivering a successful Brexit while maintaining our traditional outlook as a globally engaged nation. Indeed, Boris Johnson, the new Foreign Secretary, has made clear that while our future relationship with the EU is still to be determined, we are not leaving Europe. We want the strongest possible economic and security links with our European neighbours, as well as our close friends in North America, the Commonwealth, and of course New Zealand and Australia. We must be more active, more outward-facing, and more energetic on the world stage than ever before. Let me give you some examples. In the 7 weeks since the referendum, the UK has announced a series of measures. £60 million of new funding to support Iraq in defeating Daesh. That money will be used for counter-IED training, something that the British military, through bitter experience, is now acknowledged as a world leader in, as well as to support the stabilisation of areas recently retaken from Daesh and for humanitarian aid in general. We have committed to renewing our nuclear deterrent, which makes an essential contribution to our security and that of our NATO allies. At last month's NATO summit in Warsaw, we made a number of crucial commitments including the basing of a British battalion, it's about 500 personnel, in Estonia, and an infantry company in Poland. And we'll be taking part in next year's Baltic air policing mission, having completed a similar mission this year. Next year will also see the UK lead the NATO multi-nation spearhead force agreed at the Welsh summit of 2014. That will involve us providing 3,000 troops along with tanks and warrior armed fighting vehicles to a force which is already capable of deploying anywhere on alliance territory in just a few days, sending a clear, strong message to Russia that NATO stands ready to respond quickly to threats. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, the UK will keep 450 troops there into 2017 and deploy a further 50 personnel to provide additional mentoring, particularly for the Afghan Air Force. On migration, we are also embarking on a key role in the NATO naval operation to help reduce the number of people embarking on perilous journeys to reach southern Europe. The UK was one of the first countries to contribute a ship to that mission, and later this month HMS Mersey will take over from RFA Cardigan Bay. That mission has been successful. At its peak, 2,700 people were recorded moving every day from Turkey to Greece, and that's now around 70. Of course, planning for much of this activity has been underway since before the referendum, but we have been able to confirm and carry through these commitments because we're absolutely clear that the UK has a role to play and responsibilities to live up to in future global affairs. We take those responsibilities seriously. In recent years, the UK has also led the response against global threats and the scourge of corruption and deadly diseases like Ebola, where our forces worked alongside New Zealand doctors and nurses in Sierra Leone. And through our development efforts, we are working to end extreme poverty in the world. That means tackling the challenges from root causes of mass migration and disease to insecurity, conflict, and global climate change. We will not renege on the promises we have made and are committed to the UN global goal target of achieving zero extreme poverty by 2030, investing in programs that provide health, education and water, and tackle violence against girls and women.